This lesson, we learn construction contracts, and we have three learning objectives. First, we explain and discuss the major bidding concept, standard forms of contract, contract documents, red flag clauses in construction contracts, breach, breach of contract, the rules of the contract interpretation, and that we will be discussed the first objective in this video. And then in the next video we try to achieve the second and the third and the final learning objective, and then we apply in the problems. Explain the time of contract changes, constructive change, and the method of price adjustment for the contract changes. Differentiate time of different site conditions, delays, and their contractual consequences. So let's talk about the objective A, and that go to the slides that you have in here. So construction contract, to get the contract we need to have either way, first competitive bid contracts, and that you learn a bit in project planning, lump sum or unit price. We may go back to the project planning material to review that. Negotiated contracts, lump sum, can be unit price or cost plus fees. Cost plus fee including cost plus percentage fee, cost plus fixed fees, and cost plus incentive fee that we learned already. I just want to review that for that. So for the public owner actions after bids received, and because why public owner is more stringent in terms of the bids, so we want to do that. First, material in properties, factual determinations of the low bid, responsive and responsible bidder. So we will award to the lowest, typically in competitive contract, the lowest responsive and responsible bidders. But before we find out the lowest in terms of the bid, we need to know what is the responsive and what is the responsible bidders. So for the responsive, we refer to the bid itself. So whether the bidder responds to all the requirements from the instruction to bid by issues by the owners. So what are requirements, what the scope, what are the specifications, whether it comply in the bid, that we call it responsive. Responsible, it refers to the bidder itself. So as you can see, responsive about the bid, responsible about the bidder. Then what does that mean? Whether the bidder qualified, capable to do the work issued by the owner. So if he capable, that we call capable and qualified, then responsible bidder. So have to have both responsive and responsible bidder to be considered for the job. And it when all of the bidders that have both responsiveness and responsibility, so be in responsive and be in responsible, then the one that had the lowest bid, it will get the contract. So that, what does that mean? In the public owner, the award to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. And of course, it will if anyone submit late, then can reject the late bid. And if all the bidders, even they are responsive and responsible, but all the bids, for example, it higher than the budget by the imposed by the public owner, the public owner may have a right to reject all the bids and maybe advertise later on. The concept we call promissory estoppel. What does that mean? It requires that one who has placed another in a change or attainable position by promising a certain performance is stopped from denying the performance. Example is when the subcontractor or supplier's price quotation. when the contractor, general contractor, prepare a bid, it not expertise all of the work. I do the work, I prepare the bid, I call MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing contractors. Give me a quote for this project, and then give me a quote. I rely on that subcontractor in my bid. I put that number in, and then I got the contract. But when I got the contract, I call the subcontractor, MEP subcontractor, to sign the subcontract agreement to do the MEP work for my project. The subcontractor review their quote that they submit when I bid, and it turned out that they underestimated the work. But with the promissory estoppel, the subcontractor cannot get away, run away easily from denying to do the work. So that is promissory estoppel. So when you provide a code, something, it means you have some promise that you cannot break. So as you can see, when the code, the supplier or subcontractor tend to put some time limit, or this code effective for 3 months from the day you receive, or things like that, or expire on let's say December 31st 2025, 21, 22, etc. So that is the promissory estoppel. So standard form of contract in the US, we have the federal government construction contract that all the federal work will apply. And then most of the institutional and commercial buildings work, it follow the American Institute of Architects contracts, AIA, Form A 101 for the agreements, and A201 is for the general conditions. Associate general contractors contract, they also have that AGC, and the ASCE, they have engineers joint contract documents committee contract. And then state highway department contracts for like FDOT, they have their own contract form. So those are the type of contract and standard form that you see in the US construction industry. Then what constitutes the contract documents? First is the agreement, just like if we follow AIA, that is 101. Invitation to bid, instruction to the bidder, general conditions. If you AIA, that is the A201. Supplementary conditions, so any specific condition that apply for that project only, we can provide supplementary condition. Technical specification and drawings, you familiar with that for the project that engineer prepare for. Any addenda during the bidding process that the contractor, the potential bidder, send the request for information, clarification, things like that, it will put in there. Proposals, which is the bid bond, or bid performance bond, performance bond, that after you award contract. And then the labor and material payment bond, just like to guarantee that you don't have the mechanic liens on your properties in case the contractor don't pay the labor and material for subcontractor or supplier. So if you have a chance to work overseas, there is other terms that use, and in this few slides I want to make you a compare of the what call in construction contract terms in the US and international. And in this case, I got a FIDIC, popular forms of contract use internationally. Addenda to notice inviting bids, so that will be, we call it appendix to tenders. Award of contract, we call it letter of acceptance in international. Beneficial use, it means taking over. Bid, tender, bid form, of course, it will be tender form. Bid schedule, we call it bill of quantities. Changes in the work, we call variations. So that is the several terms that you see. Other term, date of notice to proceed, it will be commencement date. Different site conditions, it means that adverse physical obstructions. We will talk about different site conditions in the next lesson videos. Guarantee period, defects liability period, owner, employer, partial payment, provisional sums, schedule, programming, schedule values, breakdown of lump sum item. So as you can see, US and international use different terms. Now let's talk about what are the red flag clause that we need to consider carefully when we sign, review the contract. Dispute resolution and governing law, whether it happened in Florida or somewhere when something is built. What kind of resolution? What are the process involved? Mediation, arbitration. Either arbitration is final, I mean binding or non-binding. When it have a venue for litigations, things like that. So be careful to read that one. Changes clause, because all everything uncertain, and that change may happen during the course of project, so that we review carefully what consider a change. Different site conditions, like I say, we will talk about that in the next video. Delays and suspension of work, terminations and partial termination, just something like happened pandemic, you have partial terminations because of social distancing, etc. Liquidated actual damages, but when the project delays, what should be the liquidated damages or damages that the contractor had to pay for the owner, etc. Payment and retention provision, that in the previous lesson we do when we learn the financial management of construction, you know what is the payment and retention. Variation of quantities clause. So during the course of the work, we both sides may breach the contract. So it means non-comply what is the contract called for. So that is breach of contract. So a default of a contract obligation, there are three elements to be considered for the breach of contract. First, need to have privity of contract. What does that mean? Whether the two, before we say you are breach of the contract, we need to see whether the two parties have a contract. So that is privity of contract. The second is the contract impose a specific duty on one party or the other, or on all parties to the contract, impose any specific duty. Just like the contract asks you to do the ceiling work for the building, and then if you break that, you did not do the ceiling work, that apply for the breach of contract. Second point. And it must be proven that there was a failure to meet that duty. So in the contract specified, and in the real life, you did not do the ceiling work, that both all of those three elements need to be established to consider a breach of contract. And then after that, if it have, we need to see the material reality of the breach. Like the ceiling you put in your bid, $100,000, you did not do it, that immaterial reality of the breach should be. And that is the definition of breach of contract and what element is involved. But there is situation that tend to be frequently applied and occur in the construction work. The first is the failure to make payment for the completed work, just like more to client pay late to the contractor, or contractor pay late to the subcontractor or supplier. Interference with the contractual performance. You have workers of the contractor work, but the owner feel want to interfere. Oh, you have to do this, you have to do that. I want to do much better. One or two times it should be okay, but it just interfere many times, it will reduce the efficiencies of the construction work. The contractor may go after to get that you are breach of contract. Spearing doctrine. What does that mean? When the contractor received the drawings specification from the owner, it means that the owner applied the drawing and specification is workable, clear. So that is Spearink doctrine. So that one, let me go back to the, if you go further in the Spearink doctrine, you can see the Google it, and you can have the Spearink doctrine. So basically, based on the case law between the United States and Spearink that some time ago in 1918. So it's like 110 years. And if you go to that, you can read all of the information. That either related to Spearink doctrine, either implied guarantee of adequacy, that the government is responsible to provide accurate plans and specification to the contractor, rather than the presumption of the superior knowledge that here, based on the case law, as you can. And then I just go back to the FGCU facility planning website. You have the contract document. You have all of that general condition of the construction contracts, so that it apply for all the FGCU work with owner, contractor, subcontractor, payment, completion, so that you can see what we are talking about in here. Payment and completion, one of the red flag. Changes in the work, so that is the other one, you see that. And then if I go to the UF, they call it planning, design, and construction. You can have a different template for different service. If you want, you can take a look of that contract document. For example, you see the architect, engineering work, and CM, owner and professional work. So like engineer, you have that document in the UF planning, design, and construction. And again, you can go that in the FGCU facility planning website. You can learn more about that. So with that one, let me go back to the our slides. Spearink doctrine that we just might misrepresentation. So something that supposed to do the work, but before you say, oh, that's not required, but later on it's required to do the work, you misrepresent the contract. Non-disclosure of superior knowledge. So you have like geotech, you know the geotechnical report, and you know that soil condition in that areas maybe need more extra stabilization, but you hide that information before you go to bid, and then at the end the contract faced some many issues in that areas that you breach the contract. You need to disclose that one. Improper terminations of the contract. So the contractor do the work, but the owner say, oh, don't like it, I find another good contractor, let's terminate that. That may constitute breach of contract. So with that, to consider breach or not breach, we need to interpret the contract. So overview, the contracts must be interpreted as it is. So you cannot say, oh, this one a typo or something, let's change it before we interpret. No, you cannot be redrafted the contract after you sign. And determine the intent of the parties when they enter into the contract, because sometimes the word cannot speak everything. So we need to see what is the intent of the party when they plan to do that, or written that way. And look for the drafts, like draft changes, manifestation of the intent during the negotiation, so that we can see when it's something not clear in the contract. So go back to that record to see what is the intention during the contract negotiation. So when we say about the manifestation of the intent, there is 4 levels. The first manifestation is the express contract term, so it very explicitly expressed in the contract, so that is the most first priority. And then the cost of performance, so that work, whatever it work in that project itself, then we can, that is the intent of work, and everyone agree with for that specific work in that specific contract, that is the cost of performance. So it will be the second order of priority when we interpret. Cost of due diligence. So if it you do something with this owner before and now go to the new contract, and even the contract don't say anything, no cost of performance in that current contract have that type of work, but it in the past you did for this owner the same, so we call it cost of during. Previous one can be applied if there is not expressed contract terms available. The cost of performance in the current contract is not similar to the work that we dispute, so the cost of during. And the last one is separately negotiated terms for same kind of work, even if not in the contract. And the last one is the custom or trade practices. So something that industry call for, we can have that. So this is the order. The first will express in contract term, very clear, no dispute. Then if it's not, then cost performance, and go down to further to the 5 manifestations of the intent. So contract interpretation, what are the generalized rules that we have? The first, the contract must be read as a whole. You cannot extract one portion of, yeah, oh, this is what the contract says. Need to review, see all of that. Just like engineering drawing, you just not only see the drawings, need to look at the specification. So that have to read as a whole. Determine the relative importance of the manifestation of the intent, just like I said in the previous slide. Express contract terms more important than the cost of performance, more important than cost of building, and then cost, custom and trade practices. If we have a separately negotiated or added terms, then it's more important than the boilerplate language, which means that boilerplate language apply anywhere, but now we have to customize that terms, then it's more important when we interpret the contract. Other rules in the contract interpretation, the parole evidence rules. What does that mean? Evidence that the intent of the parties other than the express provision of the contract itself. The doctrine of contra proferentum, that is a Latin word, right? So contra proferentum, what does that mean? The meaning of an ambiguous contract provision is construed against the drafter. So in the contract, two parties, one draft the contract, the other side, and if something confusion in that provision, and it tend to be interpreted in the positive way for the people that don't draft that contract, and then negative way to the against the drafter. If their several meaning, it tend to be positive and negative. And priority of the documents. So the general versus specific terms. The specific term, it tend to be more priority than the general condition. Printed and written terms, so printed more important. Specification versus drawing, specification tend to be more important than drawings if there is a conflict between the two. And with that, we next video we will learn the contract changes.